The Caltharian ship Bloodfang drifted through the void like a predator stalking its prey. Captain Vex Sharpclaw stood on the bridge, his yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction as he watched the small human transport vessel on his scanner. The ship was barely the size of his smallest fighter craft, carrying what appeared to be a single occupant. "Easy pickings," growled his second-in-command, Wraith. The scarred warrior's claws clicked against his weapon as he spoke. "Humans are always worth good money in the slave markets." Vex nodded, his lips pulling back to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. The Calthari were known throughout the galaxy as the ultimate hunters. Their wolf-like appearance wasn't just for show. They possessed incredible strength, lightning-fast reflexes, and an unmatched killer instinct that had earned them fear and respect across 1,000 worlds. "Target their engines," Vex commanded. "I want them alive but helpless." The attack was swift and brutal. Energy bolts lanced out from the Bloodfang, crippling the human vessel's propulsion systems in seconds. The small ship tumbled helplessly in space as the Caltharian warship moved in for capture. Within minutes, the human transport was secured in their cargo bay. Vex and 5 of his best warriors made their way to investigate their prize. The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into the cramped interior of the human ship. What they found was not what they expected. Huddled in the corner of the small passenger compartment was a human female, no more than 16 years old by their appearance. She had long brown hair and wide, frightened eyes that darted between her captors like a cornered animal. Her clothes were simple and worn, suggesting she was not from a wealthy family. "Just a child," Wraith said with disappointment. "Hardly seems worth the effort." But Vex was studying the girl more carefully. Something about her didn't add up. Her ship, while small, was equipped with advanced navigation systems far beyond what a simple civilian would need. The girl herself, despite her obvious fear, held herself with a strange composure that suggested hidden strength. "What's your name, little human?" Vex asked, his voice a low rumble. The girl looked up at him with defiant eyes. "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah Chen." "Well, Sarah Chen," Vex said, circling her slowly like the predator he was, "you're going to make us very rich. Human slaves fetch excellent prices, especially young ones like yourself." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. The Calthari warriors laughed among themselves, already counting their profits. They transferred Sarah to their ship and secured her in a holding cell deep within the Bloodfang. The cell was designed for dangerous prisoners, reinforced walls, energy barriers, and monitoring systems that tracked every movement and heartbeat. As the Bloodfang set course for the nearest slave market at Zirian Prime, Vex felt satisfied with their easy capture. The girl would bring them enough credits to keep his crew happy for months. It was exactly the kind of simple job he preferred. Minimal risk, maximum profit. But as the hours passed, strange things began to happen aboard the ship. It started with small malfunctions. A door that wouldn't open properly here, a computer terminal that flickered there. Nothing serious enough to cause alarm, but enough to make the crew slightly uneasy. Calthari ships were known for their reliability, and the Bloodfang had never experienced such issues before. In her cell, Sarah sat quietly on the narrow bunk, apparently resigned to her fate. She barely touched the food they brought her and spoke only when directly questioned. To all appearances, she was exactly what she seemed, a frightened young girl who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The ship's engineer, Crix, reported to Vex about the increasing number of minor system failures. "It's probably just old components finally giving out," he said, though his ears were flattened against his head in obvious concern. "I can fix them, but it's odd that so many are failing at once." Vex dismissed the concerns with a wave of his clawed hand. In his experience, ships sometimes went through periods of temperamental behavior. As long as life support and engines remained stable, minor glitches were nothing to worry about. But the glitches continued to multiply. By the second day of their journey to Zirian Prime, half the crew was dealing with equipment failures. Lights flickered randomly. The galley replicator produced meals that tasted like metal, and the environmental controls couldn't seem to maintain a steady temperature. "Captain?" Wraith approached Vex with obvious unease. "The crew is getting nervous. Some of them are talking about the human girl being cursed or something." Vex snorted with derision. "Superstitious fools. She's just a child sitting in a locked cell. How could she possibly affect our ship's systems?" Despite his confident words, Vex found himself thinking about their prisoner more often than he cared to admit. There was something about the way she looked at them, not with the broken despair he expected from a captive, but with a quiet patience that unsettled him. On the third day, the problems escalated. The ship's main computer began experiencing random shutdowns. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, sending crew members tumbling through corridors. Most disturbing of all, the ship's weapon systems activated on their own, firing harmless but alarming bursts of energy into empty space. "This is impossible," Crick snarled as he worked frantically at his engineering console. "None of these systems are connected. There's no way a cascade failure could affect such diverse components." Vex stood beside him, watching the diagnostic readouts with growing alarm. His ship was falling apart around them, and he had no idea why. The logical part of his mind insisted there had to be a rational explanation. But a deeper, more primitive part of his brain was beginning to whisper warnings. "Show me the prisoner," he ordered. They made their way to the holding cells, where Sarah still sat quietly on her bunk. She looked up as they approached, and for just a moment Vex could have sworn he saw something flicker in her eyes. Not fear, but calculation. "Is everything all right, Captain?" she asked with what seemed like genuine concern. "I've been hearing strange noises." Vex studied her carefully, searching for any sign of deception. But all he saw was a young human girl who appeared as confused and worried as anyone else on the ship. Still, something nagged at him. The timing was too convenient, the problems too widespread. As they returned to the bridge, Vex made a decision that would prove to be crucial in the days to come. Instead of dismissing the crew's fears, he decided to take precautions. He ordered extra security on the detention level and had monitoring systems focused specifically on their prisoner. What he didn't know was that by then, it was already far too late. The changes had begun, and nothing would ever be the same aboard the Bloodfang. The fourth day aboard the Bloodfang began with what the crew would later describe as the morning from hell. Vex was awakened by his personal alarm system shrieking at maximum volume. As he stumbled from his quarters, the corridor light strobed in a seizure-inducing pattern that made his sensitive Kalthari eyes water. The ship's atmospheric processors were working overtime, creating a humid, oppressive environment that made breathing difficult. "Report," he barked as he reached the bridge. "Sir, we've lost control of 70% of our ship's systems," reported Navigation Officer Tern, her usual calm demeanor cracked with stress. "Whatever's happening is spreading faster than we can contain it." Vex's blood ran cold. A Kalthari warship was one of the most sophisticated pieces of technology in the galaxy. For so many systems to fail simultaneously suggested either a catastrophic design flaw or something far more sinister. "What about our prisoner?" he demanded. "Still in her cell, sir. The security feeds show she hasn't moved from her bunk since yesterday evening. She appears to be sleeping." That should have been reassuring, but it only made Vex more suspicious. Any normal person would be terrified by the chaos erupting around them. Yet Sarah Chen remained as calm as if she were in her own bedroom at home. "I want a full security team on the detention level," he ordered, "and get me a direct visual on the girl. No cameras. I want eyes on her at all times." As the day progressed, the situation continued to deteriorate. The ship's medical bay reported that half the crew was experiencing severe headaches and nausea. The food replicators had completely failed, forcing them to rely on emergency rations that tasted like cardboard. Most disturbingly, several crew members reported hearing voices in the walls, whispers in languages they didn't recognize. Vex tried to maintain order, but he could see fear spreading through his warriors like a plague. The Kalthari prided themselves on their courage in battle, but this was different. This was an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't understand. In the early afternoon, things took a turn that would haunt Vex's nightmares for the rest of his life. He was reviewing damage reports when Wraith burst onto the bridge, his fur standing on end and his eyes wild with terror. "Captain," he gasped, "you need to see this now." They rushed to the detention level where a crowd of crew members had gathered outside Sarah's cell. They were all staring at something with expressions of absolute horror. As Vex pushed through the group, he saw what had captured their attention. Sarah was still sitting on her bunk exactly as before. But the walls of her cell were covered with writing, thousands of words in dozens of different languages carved deep into the supposedly impenetrable metal. The text spiraled across every surface in intricate patterns that hurt to look at directly. "How is this possible?" Wraith whispered. "The cell walls are made of reinforced titanium steel alloy," Nothing could carve through them except industrial cutting tools. Vex approached the energy barrier separating them from the cell. The writing was fresh. He could see metal shavings on the floor where the words had been gouged out. Yet Sarah's hands showed no sign of damage, no blood or cuts that would indicate she had somehow accomplished this impossible task. "Can anyone read what it says?" he asked. Tern stepped forward, her translator device scanning the text. Her face went pale as the readings came through. It's the same message repeated in every known galactic language, sir, even some dead languages that haven't been spoken for millennia." "What does it say?" Tern's voice was barely a whisper. "They are coming. The Guardians wake. Justice will be served." The temperature in the corridor seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vex felt every instinct in his predator's brain screaming at him to run, to get as far away from this place as possible. But he forced himself to stay calm, to think rationally about what they were facing. "There has to be an explanation," he said, more to convince himself than anyone else. "Hidden tools, accomplices, some kind of technology we don't understand." But even as he spoke the words, he didn't believe them. The evidence before his eyes defied every law of physics he knew. As if responding to his thoughts, Sarah looked up from her bunk and met his gaze directly. For the first time since her capture, she smiled. It wasn't the smile of a frightened child. It was the smile of someone who knew something he didn't. Someone who was waiting for something wonderful to happen. "Hello, Captain Vex," she said in a voice that carried perfectly through the energy barrier. "I think it's time we had a proper conversation." The way she said his name with such casual familiarity sent chills down his spine. He had never told her who he was, never introduced himself. Yet she spoke as if she had known him for years. "How do you know my name?" he demanded. "I know many things about you, Captain. I know you were born on Calthar Prime in the northern mountains. I know you have a scar on your left shoulder from a hunting accident when you were 12. I know you killed your first sentient being when you were 15, a Xerian merchant who tried to cheat your father." Vex staggered backward. The information she was reciting wasn't just personal. It was impossible for her to know. Some of those details weren't recorded anywhere, existed only in his own memories. "I know you've been having dreams lately," Sarah continued, her smile growing wider. "Dreams about Earth, about blue skies and green forests, about a world you've never seen but somehow remember." That was the breaking point. Vex had indeed been having such dreams, vivid visions that left him waking in a cold sweat. He had never told anyone about them, had convinced himself they were just random neural firings caused by stress. "What are you?" he whispered. "I'm exactly what I appear to be," Sarah replied. "A 16-year-old human girl named Sarah Chen. But I'm also something else. Something you and your kind have forgotten in your rush to become the galaxy's greatest predators." The ship shuddered around them, and new alarms began wailing. But this time, it wasn't system failures causing the disturbance. Through the corridors, a sound echoed that no one aboard had ever heard before. The deep, resonant hum of massive engines unlike anything in their technology databases. "They're here," Sarah said simply. On the bridge, automated systems that had been failing all week suddenly sprang to life with perfect efficiency. The main view screen activated, showing space around the Bloodfang. What they saw there defied belief. Ships were emerging from hyperspace, not just a few, but hundreds of them. They were unlike anything in the known galaxy, sleek and organic looking, as if they had been grown rather than built. Each one was massive, dwarfing even the largest Calthari dreadnoughts. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Vex of the Calthari warship Bloodfang," he transmitted, his voice cracking with strain. "Identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came not through their communication systems, but through every speaker on the ship simultaneously. The voice was calm, measured, and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terra Defense Fleet. You are holding one of our citizens against her will. Surrender her immediately or face the consequences." Vex felt his world crumble around him. Terra Defense Fleet. He had heard whispers of such an organization in the darkest corners of galactic intelligence networks. Stories so incredible that most dismissed them as myth. Tales of a human military force so advanced, so powerful, that entire star systems had simply vanished after crossing them. But those were just stories. Humans were weak, scattered, primitive. They posed no threat to the established galactic order. Looking at the impossible fleet surrounding his ship, Vex realized that everything he thought he knew about humans was catastrophically wrong. Vex stared at the view screen in stunned silence. The human ships hung in space like sleeping giants, their hulls shimmering with energy patterns that made his targeting computers malfunction just trying to scan them. Each vessel was easily 3 times the size of his own warship, and sensors indicated there were over 200 of them arranged in a perfect sphere around the Bloodfang. "This is impossible," Wraith growled beside him. "Intelligence reports say humans barely have interstellar capability. They're scattered refugees, not this." "Intelligence was wrong," Vex replied grimly. He keyed his communicator. "Admiral Chen, I am Captain Vex Sharpclaw of the Kalthari Imperium. The human aboard my ship is a captured prisoner, taken according to galactic salvage laws. She was alone and defenseless." The response came with an undertone of amusement that made Vex's fur stand on end. "Captain, my daughter is many things, but defenseless is not one of them. You've been playing her game since the moment you captured her." "Daughter." The word hit Vex like a physical blow. Sarah Chen wasn't just some random human child. She was the daughter of what appeared to be one of the most powerful military commanders in the galaxy. "Your daughter?" Vex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah is my youngest," Admiral Chen confirmed. "She's also one of our most promising young operatives. Did you really think it was coincidence that you found her alone in that transport ship? That your sophisticated hunter's instincts led you to such easy prey?" Down in the detention cell, Sarah had stood up and was watching the energy barrier with obvious anticipation. As if she could hear every word of the conversation happening on the bridge, she spoke to the security team surrounding her cell. "You should probably step back now," she said conversationally. "This part always makes people nervous." Before anyone could react, Sarah placed her hand against the energy barrier. There was a flash of light, a sound like crystal breaking, and suddenly the barrier was gone. Not deactivated, gone as if it had never existed. The security team raised their weapons, but Sarah held up a peaceful hand. "There's no need for violence. I'm not going anywhere. Not yet." "How did you do that?" one of the guards demanded. "The same way I've been doing everything else," Sarah replied. "I asked the ship nicely." On the bridge, Vex was trying to process what Admiral Chen had told him. "You're saying this was a trap? That your daughter deliberately put herself in danger?" "Not danger, Captain. Training. Sarah is being prepared for advanced diplomatic and intelligence work. Part of that training involves understanding how other species think, how they operate, what drives them. Your crew has provided valuable data." "Data?" Vex's temper flared. The idea that his proud warriors had been nothing more than experimental subjects was almost more than he could bear. "We are Kalthari. We bow to no one. And yet you're surrounded by my fleet. Your ship is under our control. And my daughter has been studying your every move for 3 days." Admiral Chen's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the words. "Tell me, Captain, what does that teach us about Kalthari pride?" The truth was like a knife to Vex's heart. Everything that had happened, the system failures, the strange writing on the walls, the crew's growing fear, it had all been orchestrated. They had been puppets dancing to a tune they couldn't even hear. "The ship malfunctions," he said slowly. "She caused them. Sarah has a gift for understanding technology. She can interface with most computer systems through methods we don't fully understand ourselves. Some of our scientists believe it's a form of advanced intuition. Others think it's something more. Regardless, she's been learning about your ship's capabilities while simultaneously demonstrating human ingenuity." Vex thought about the writing on the cell walls, the impossible depth of the carved letters, and the message in the cell. A calling card. "When humans are threatened, we respond." The message was transmitted instantaneously across the galaxy the moment it was complete. High Fleet began moving within minutes. "Instantaneous communication across the galaxy," Tern whispered from her station. "That's theoretically impossible." "Many things humans do seem theoretically impossible," Admiral Chen replied. "It's one of our more charming characteristics." On the security feeds, they could see Sarah walking freely through the detention-level corridors. The automated systems that had been failing all week were now opening doors for her, adjusting lighting to illuminate her path, even playing what sounded like pleasant music from the speakers. It was as if the ship itself was welcoming her. "She's taken control of our entire vessel," Wraith observed with something approaching awe. "How is that possible?" "Think about it." Sarah's voice came through the communication system even though she was nowhere near a transmitter. "You build your ships with sophisticated computer networks. Artificial intelligence systems, automated processes. You make them smart enough to run themselves. But you never consider what happens when someone smarter comes along. She appeared on the bridge a few moments later, walking casually through the main doors as if she owned the place. The security teams had followed her, but their weapons were lowered. There was no point in threatening someone who could apparently control their ship's life support systems. "Hello again, Captain Vex," Sarah said with that same unsettling smile. "I hope you've enjoyed our little dance." "I certainly have." Vex looked at this slip of a human girl who had single-handedly brought his warship to its knees. She appeared completely harmless, young, small, dressed in simple clothes, but her eyes held depths of intelligence and capability that made his predator instincts scream warnings. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "Want?" Sarah tilted her head thoughtfully. "I want you to learn. You see, Captain, the galaxy has been operating under certain assumptions for a long time. Assumptions about who holds power, who deserves respect, who can be safely ignored or exploited." She walked to the view screen, gazing out at the human fleet surrounding them. "Humans have been watching, learning, preparing. We've seen how species like the Kalthari treat those they perceive as weak. We've documented the slave markets, the raids on defenseless colonies, the casual cruelty. We are predators," Vex said defensively. "It is our nature." "And we are guardians," Sarah replied. "It is ours. The question now is whether the galaxy is big enough for both." Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge again. "Captain Vex, you and your crew are facing a choice. You can continue on your current path, hunting, killing, enslaving those weaker than yourselves. If you do, you'll find that humans are very good at protecting the innocent. Exceptionally good." The threat was clear, even wrapped in diplomatic language. Vex had seen enough to know that these humans possessed technology and capabilities far beyond anything in his databases. If they chose to intervene in Kalthari activities, it would not end well for his people. "Or?" he asked. "Or you can learn a new way of thinking. The galaxy is vast, with opportunities for those willing to work within civilized boundaries. Trade, exploration, scientific advancement, all more profitable in the long run than piracy and slavery." Sarah turned back to face him. "My father is offering you a chance, Captain. A chance to evolve beyond what you are now. The choice is yours." Vex looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were hardened warriors, killers who had never backed down from any fight. But in their eyes he saw something he had never seen before. Uncertainty. They had discovered that they were not the apex predators they believed themselves to be. "And if we refuse?" he asked. Sarah's smile faded, and for a moment he saw something in her expression that chilled him to the bone. It wasn't anger or hatred. It was the calm certainty of someone who had already calculated all possible outcomes. "Then you'll learn why humans are called the galaxy's guardians," she said simply. "And you'll discover that some prey fight back." The silence that followed Sarah's words stretched across the bridge like a taut wire ready to snap. Vex could hear the breathing of his crew, could smell their fear sweat mixing with his own. Everything he had believed about the natural order of the galaxy was crumbling around him. "Show me," he said finally. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Show you what, Captain?" "You say humans are guardians. You claim to protect the weak. Prove it." Vex's voice grew stronger as he spoke, his warrior's pride reasserting itself despite the circumstances. "Words are easy. Show me what human protection actually means." Sarah exchanged a glance with one of the security feeds, as if looking directly at her father through the camera. After a moment, she nodded. "Very well. Computer, display Galactic Sector 77 Alpha on the main screen. Time index 72 hours ago." The view screen flickered and changed, showing a star system Vex recognized immediately. His blood ran cold as he realized what he was seeing. "The Zilani colonies," Wraith whispered. On screen, 3 worlds orbited a small yellow star. Vex had been to this system before. It was home to the Zilani, a peaceful species of traders and farmers who possessed no military to speak of. Their technology was basic, their defenses minimal. They survived by offering tribute to stronger species and staying out of galactic politics. 48 hours ago, a Kalthari raid fleet attacked these worlds, Sarah said, her voice taking on a colder tone. 15 ships under the command of war leader Karn Bloodmane. "Are you familiar with his methods, Captain?" Vex's jaw tightened. He knew Bloodmane well. The warrior was famous throughout the Imperium for his brutality. Where most raiders would take slaves and valuable resources before moving on, Bloodmane preferred to make examples. Entire colonies had been wiped out simply to demonstrate Kalthari power. The Zilani had no defenses, Sarah continued. No military, no weapons capable of threatening Kalthari warships. By all conventional wisdom, they were completely helpless. The screen showed the peaceful colonies from orbit. Small cities dotted the planet's surfaces, connected by networks of roads and bridges. Farmland stretched between urban areas, and orbital platforms handled the light traffic of merchant vessels. It was a picture of quiet prosperity. Bloodmane's attack began here, Sarah said, and the display shifted to show a massive Kalthari dreadnought emerging from hyperspace. More ships followed, a full war fleet designed to crush any resistance before it could form. Vex watched in fascination despite himself. He had seen raid recordings before, but something about this felt different. The camera angles were too perfect, the detail too sharp. This wasn't recorded by Kalthari systems. Who made this recording? He asked. We did, Sarah replied simply. Humans have been monitoring Kalthari military activities for some time. We were already watching when Bloodmane arrived. The assault began as Vex expected it would. The Kalthari ships opened fire on orbital installations, crippling communications and transportation. Landing craft descended toward the planet's surfaces, carrying troops to round up prisoners and gather loot. It was a textbook example of overwhelming force applied against helpless targets. But then something unprecedented happened. As the first Kalthari shuttles touched down, new contacts appeared on the sensors. Ships materialized in the system as if from nowhere. Dozens of them, sleek and advanced, arranged in defensive formations around the three worlds. This is Admiral Harrison of the Terra Defense Fleet, came a transmission. Kalthari vessels, you are in violation of Galactic Protection Accord 7-7. Withdraw immediately or face defensive action. War Leader Bloodmane's response was predictably aggressive. Unknown vessels, this system is under Kalthari dominion. Withdraw or be destroyed, negative. The Zilani are under human protection. This is your final warning. What happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. Bloodmane, commanding one of the most powerful war fleets in the Imperium, ordered an attack on the human ships. The battle lasted exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Vex watched in stunned amazement as human weapon systems devastated the Kalthari fleet with surgical precision. Energy beams that defied his understanding of physics sliced through hull armor like it was paper. Missiles that moved at impossible speeds struck with pinpoint accuracy, disabling weapons and engines without destroying the ships themselves. Impossible, Wraith breathed. Those ships, how are they moving like that? The human vessels danced through space with a grace that shouldn't have been possible for objects of their size. They avoided Kalthari fire with seemingly casual ease while their return salvos found every target they aimed for. But what truly shattered Vex's understanding was the restraint the humans showed. They could have destroyed every Kalthari ship in the fleet within minutes. But they didn't. Instead, they systematically disabled each vessel, leaving the crews alive but helpless. War Leader Bloodmane, came Admiral Harrison's voice again. Your fleet is neutralized. Prepare to be boarded for processing. You dare? Bloodmane's transmission cut off as his flagship lost power. The boarding process was educational, Sarah said as the recording showed human troops moving through Kalthari ships. Your people learned some uncomfortable truths about human capabilities. The screen shifted to show the interior of Bloodmane's command ship. Human soldiers in advanced armor moved through the corridors with professional efficiency. But what caught Vex's attention was how they treated their prisoners. There was no unnecessary violence, no casual cruelty. The Kalthari crew was secured and processed with the same care they might show to injured civilians. Where is Bloodmane now? Vex asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. In a human detention facility awaiting trial for war crimes. He and his senior officers will face justice for their actions. The rest of his crew was given a choice: join human rehabilitation programs or return to Kalthari space with a message. What kind of message? Sarah's expression grew serious. That the age of casual predation is over. The galaxy has guardians now and they're watching. The recording shifted again, showing the aftermath of the battle. The Zilani colonies were completely unharmed. Not a single building damaged, not a single civilian injured. Human medical ships were already in orbit, offering assistance and technology to improve the planet's defenses. The Zalani now have human protection, Sarah explained. Early warning systems, defensive platforms, communication networks. They'll never be helpless again. Beck stared at the screen, trying to process what he had witnessed. In less than 4 minutes, a human fleet had neutralized one of the Imperium's most feared war leaders and saved an entire star system. And they had done it while showing more restraint and mercy than any Kalthari would have believed possible. How many systems are under your protection? He asked quietly. Currently, 237. The number grows each week as more species request our assistance. Sarah stepped closer to him. Would you like to know what they all have in common, Captain? Tell me. They were all victims of Kalthari raids, or Vorthan slavers, or Zarian pirates, all species that believed might made right, that the strong could take whatever they wanted from the weak. Her eyes met his directly. Your people have created the very situation that brought us into the open. Wraith snarled from across the bridge. You speak of us as if we're criminals. We are warriors. We take what we can hold, as is our right. Sarah turned to face the scarred Kalthari. And now you've met someone who can hold more than you can take. How does that make you feel, Wraith Bloodclaw? The use of his full name stopped the warrior cold. Like with Vex, she shouldn't have known it, but clearly did. The question facing you all, Sarah continued, addressing the entire bridge crew, is what you do with this new knowledge. You can cling to old ways and find yourselves on the wrong side of human protection operations. Or you can evolve. Into what? Vex demanded. You want us to become farmers? Merchants? We are predators. Then be predators who hunt something worthy of your skills, Sarah replied. Hunt pirates and slavers instead of innocent civilians. Hunt criminals and tyrants instead of the defenseless. There's plenty of real prey in the galaxy if you're brave enough to face it. The idea was so foreign to Kalthari, thinking that Vex struggled to comprehend it. Hunt the strong instead of the weak? Risk real danger for questionable profit? It went against every instinct his people possessed. And yet as he looked at the human fleet surrounding his ship, he realized that his people's instincts had led them into a confrontation they could not win. Perhaps it was time to consider new possibilities. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge once again, but this time there was a different quality to it. Less threat, more invitation. Captain Vex, I'm going to make you an offer. One that I hope you'll consider carefully. Vex straightened, his warrior's instincts telling him to be wary of gifts from enemies. I'm listening. My daughter has spent 3 days studying your crew, learning how you think, how you operate. Her assessment is that you and your people have potential beyond what you currently understand. Sarah, would you care to elaborate? Sarah moved to the center of the bridge, and Vex noticed that his crew naturally gave her space. The small human girl commanded respect through presence alone, something that impressed him despite everything that had happened. The Kalthari are exceptional warriors, Sarah began. Your reflexes, strength, and tactical thinking are among the best in the galaxy. But you've been wasting these gifts on easy targets. It's like watching master swordsmen use their skills to threaten children. We take what we can, Wraith growled, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. Because that's all you've ever been taught to want, Sarah replied. But what if there were better prizes? More challenging hunts? Victories that would bring real honor instead of just profit? She gestured to the view screen, which now showed star charts marking various systems throughout the galaxy. Red dots indicated problem areas, pirate strongholds, slave markets, criminal organizations. The galaxy is full of real predators, Sarah continued. Pirates who prey on trade routes, slavers who capture entire populations, criminal syndicates that corrupt governments and exploit the innocent. These are threats that even human forces sometimes struggle to address effectively. Vex studied the display with growing interest. Some of those red markers indicated organizations he recognized. Groups powerful enough that even Kalthari raiders usually avoided them. You're suggesting we hunt these targets instead? I'm suggesting you become what you were always meant to be, Sarah said. Not raiders preying on the helpless, but hunters tracking dangerous game. The kind of warriors that others call upon when facing their worst enemies. Admiral Chen's transmission continued the thought. The Human Defense Fleet has been authorized to offer contracts to qualified military units. Legitimate work, proper payment, and targets that would test the limits of even Kalthari capabilities. Mercenary work? Vex asked, and there was distaste in his voice. Kalthari took pride in their independence. Partnership, Sarah corrected. Joint operations between human forces and Kalthari specialists. You bring skills we sometimes lack. Boarding actions, close combat, tracking abilities that our technology can't replicate. We provide intelligence, support, and access to prey worthy of your abilities. The bridge fell silent as Vex's crew absorbed this proposal. It was so far from traditional Kalthari thinking that many of them looked confused. But Vex himself was beginning to see possibilities that intrigued him. "What kind of prey?" he asked. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since her capture, it looked genuinely pleased rather than calculating. "Tell me, Captain, have you ever heard of the Crimson Syndicate?" Every Kalthari on the bridge tensed at the name. The Crimson Syndicate was legendary in the worst possible way. A criminal organization that specialized in the most horrific forms of exploitation. They dealt in exotic slaves, illegal weapons, and services so dark that even most pirates refused to associate with them. They operate from a fortress station in the Nexus sector, Sarah continued, heavily defended, constantly moving, protected by some of the most ruthless mercenaries in the galaxy. Human intelligence has been tracking them for years, but their defenses are too strong for a direct assault. "And you think we could succeed where you cannot?" There was skepticism in Vex's voice, but also growing interest. Not alone, but a combined operation, human ships to break their outer defenses, Kalthari boarding teams to penetrate their inner strongholds. That might just work. Sarah pulled up detailed schematics of the Syndicate's operations. The challenge would be significant. The rewards even more so. "What rewards?" Wraith asked, his mercenary instincts overriding his suspicions. "The Syndicate's accumulated wealth is estimated at over 50 billion galactic credits," Admiral Chen answered. "Under human law, criminal assets seized in joint operations are shared with partner forces. Additionally, there would be regular contracts available for similar work. 50 billion credits. The number was so large that several crew members actually gasped. It represented more wealth than most Kalthari clans accumulated in generations. But Vex was thinking beyond the immediate profit. This would make us enemies of every criminal organization in the galaxy. Yes, Sarah agreed. It would also make you heroes to their victims. And it would prove that the Kalthari can be something more than raiders and slavers. Heroes? The word felt strange in Vex's mouth. It wasn't a concept that had much meaning in Kalthari culture. "The galaxy is full of species that have suffered under predators," Sarah explained. "Imagine if the name Kalthari became associated with protection instead of exploitation. If your people were known as the hunters who tracked down the truly dangerous criminals." Vex could see the appeal, but years of raider mentality were hard to overcome. "And if we refuse? If we choose to continue as we have?" The warmth left Sarah's expression. "Then you'll find that the galaxy has become a much more dangerous place for traditional raiders. Human protection networks are expanding rapidly. Systems that were once easy targets now have early warning systems and defensive platforms. Pirates and slavers are finding it increasingly difficult to operate." "You're ending our way of life," Wraith accused. "Your way of life was ending anyway," Sarah replied bluntly. "You just hadn't realized it yet. The question is whether you adapt and thrive, or cling to the past and become extinct." Admiral Chen's voice added weight to his daughter's words. "Captain Vex, I want you to understand something. The offer we're making isn't charity or pity, it's recognition of potential. The Kalthari could become invaluable partners in maintaining galactic security, but only if you're willing to evolve beyond what you currently are." Vex looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were warriors who had followed him through countless raids, trusted him to lead them to victory and profit. Now he was being asked to fundamentally change everything they believed about themselves and their place in the galaxy. "I need to consult with my crew," he said finally. "Of course," Sarah nodded. "Take all the time you need. We'll maintain position while you discuss your options." As the human communication cut off, Vex found himself facing the most important decision of his life. Everything his people had built was based on being stronger than their prey, taking what they wanted from those too weak to resist. Now they had encountered something stronger than themselves, and their entire worldview was crumbling. "Captain," Tern spoke up quietly, "the crew is scared. They don't understand what's happening." "Neither do I," Vex admitted, "but I know we can't continue as we have. These humans, they're not like anything we've encountered before. They're offering us a chance to hunt real prey," Wraith said slowly. "Dangerous prey, the kind of hunts that would be worthy of true warriors, but working with humans. Taking orders from them? Another crew member shook his head. It goes against everything we are, does it? Vex asked. Or does it go against everything we've limited ourselves to being? He moved to the view screen, looking out at the human fleet that surrounded them. Each ship represented technology and capabilities beyond his understanding. But more than that, they represented a completely different way of thinking about strength and power. I want all senior staff in the conference room, he ordered. We need to decide what kind of warriors we want to be. The conference room aboard the Bloodfang had seen many war councils, but none quite like this one. Vex sat at the head of the metal table, surrounded by his senior officers. The discussion had been going on for over an hour, and tempers were beginning to fray. It's madness, snarled Chief Engineer Crix, his claws leaving scratches in the table surface. We're talking about abandoning everything that makes us Kalthari. Working with other species, following human rules, becoming civilized. As opposed to being extinct, Wraith countered, because that's what we're facing if we continue on our current path. Did you see what their weapons did to Bloodmane's fleet? We wouldn't last 5 minutes in a real fight. Navigation Officer Tern looked up from her datapad. I've been running projections based on what we've observed. The human expansion rate suggests they'll have protection networks throughout our traditional hunting grounds within 2 years. Our entire raiding economy will collapse. Then we expand into new territories, Weapons Officer Zaxxon growled. Find systems the humans haven't reached yet. And how long before they follow us there? Vex asked quietly. How long before we're running from sector to sector? Always looking over our shoulders, always afraid. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Fear was not something Kalthari warriors admitted to easily, but the reality of their situation was impossible to ignore. Captain, Tern continued, I've also been analyzing the data on this Crimson Syndicate operation they mentioned. The technical challenges alone would require capabilities we've never attempted before. The profit projections, however. She activated the room's holographic display, showing detailed financial calculations. The numbers were staggering, not just the immediate payout from seizing syndicate assets, but the long-term income from regular contract work with human forces. We could outfit the entire crew with the best equipment available, she said. Upgrade our ships, hire additional warriors, establish a permanent base of operations. In 5 years, we could be running the most successful military organization in this sector. Military organization, Crick spat. Listen to yourself. We're raiders, not some corporate security force. What's the difference? Vex asked. We fight, we win, we profit. The only change is the quality of our targets. And the quality of our allies, Wraith added thoughtfully. I've been thinking about what the human girl said. About hunting prey worthy of our skills. When was the last time we faced a real challenge? When was the last time a victory actually meant something? The room fell silent as each warrior considered their recent raids. Defenseless colonies, unarmed merchant ships, species too weak or peaceful to fight back effectively. It had been profitable, but hardly glorious. The Crimson Syndicate, Zaxxon said slowly. They've been operating for decades. Every major military force in the galaxy has tried to take them down at some point. If we succeeded where others have failed, it would be legendary, another officer finished. The kind of victory that gets remembered for generations. Vex could see the shift in his crew's thinking. The initial fear and resistance were giving way to warriors' pride and the lure of a truly challenging hunt. But there was still one major obstacle. We'd be working with humans, he said, taking direction from them, coordinating our operations with theirs. Some of you seem to forget that until yesterday we considered them prey. Maybe that's the problem, Tern said quietly. Maybe we've been thinking too small. All eyes turned to her. She rarely spoke during strategic discussions, preferring to focus on her navigation duties. When she did offer opinions, they were usually worth hearing. The humans didn't just defeat us, she continued. They made us irrelevant. Every assumption we had about the galactic power structure was wrong. We thought we were apex predators, but we were just scavengers. The comparison stung, but Vex recognized the accuracy of it. Kalthari raiders did prefer easy targets, minimal risk operations. They had convinced themselves it was efficiency, but perhaps it was really cowardice. So what are you suggesting? He asked. That we learn from the apex predators, Tern replied. The humans didn't become powerful by preying on the weak. They became powerful by protecting them, by taking on the challenges that others couldn't or wouldn't face. You want us to become protectors? Crix asked with disbelief. I want us to become worthy of the name Kalthari, Tern shot back. Our ancestors didn't conquer half their homeworld by attacking farmers and merchants. They fought other warriors, other predators. They earned their reputation through strength and skill, not opportunism. The reference to their species' legendary past struck home. Every Kalthari grew up hearing stories of the great wars on their homeworld, when competing clans had battled for supremacy in contests of skill and courage. Those were the warriors their people honored, not the raiders and slavers that dominated modern Kalthari culture. The human girl, Wraith said suddenly, Sarah. She studied us for 3 days, learned everything about how we operate. What do you think she learned about our potential? Vex had been wondering the same thing. Someone with Sarah's obvious intelligence and resources wouldn't waste time on a proposal that had no chance of success. If she believed the Kalthari could adapt to this new role, perhaps there was more potential there than any of them realized. There's only one way to find out, he said finally. But I want to be clear about what we're discussing. This isn't just changing our tactics or finding new hunting grounds. This is fundamentally altering what it means to be Kalthari. Maybe it's time, Tern said. Maybe our old way of being Kalthari was leading us toward extinction anyway. Vex looked around the table at each of his officers. These warriors had followed him through dozens of successful raids, trusted his judgment in countless dangerous situations. Now he was asking them to trust him in something that would reshape their entire civilization. All those in favor of accepting the human partnership proposal, he said formally. One by one, clawed hands rose around the table. First Tern, then Wraith, then others. Even Crix, after a long moment of internal struggle, raised his hand. Unanimous, Vex observed. Then we're agreed. We become something new. He activated the communication system. Sarah, this is Captain Vex. We've reached a decision. Sarah's voice came through the speakers almost immediately, as if she had been waiting. I'm listening, Captain. We accept your proposal. The crew of the Bloodfang formally requests partnership status with the human defense fleet. There was a pause, and when Sarah spoke again, there was genuine warmth in her voice. Welcome to the galaxy's Guardian Force, Captain. I think you're going to find this much more satisfying than raiding defenseless colonies. What happens now? Vex asked. Now you learn. Admiral Chen's voice joined the conversation. Your ship will be escorted to a human training facility, where you and your crew will receive briefings on our operational procedures, legal frameworks, and tactical methods. The process typically takes about 6 weeks. And then we hunt the Crimson Syndicate, Sarah replied, and there was anticipation in her voice. Together. As the human fleet began moving into formation around the Bloodfang, Vex felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine excitement about the future. For the first time since he'd become a ship captain, he was facing challenges that would test the full extent of his abilities. Captain, Wraith approached him as the crew began preparations for departure. Do you think we're making the right choice? Vex looked out at the human ships surrounding them, no longer captors but partners. Ask me again after we've taken down the most dangerous criminal organization in the galaxy. And if we fail? Then we fail attempting something worthy of legend, Vex replied. Which is more than most Kalthari can say about their deaths. As the Bloodfang jumped to hyperspace under human escort, Vex couldn't help but think about how much had changed in just a few days. They had set out to capture a helpless human girl for the slave markets. Instead, they had found a new purpose that might just save their entire species from irrelevance. Sometimes, he reflected, the best hunts were the ones where you ended up as the prey. 6 months later, the Bloodfang hung in space alongside the human dreadnought Terra's shield, both ships positioned at the edge of the Nexus sector. Between them stretched the most ambitious joint military operation in galactic history, the final assault on the Crimson Syndicate's mobile fortress. Captain Vex stood on his bridge, but everything about him had changed. His armor now bore the insignia of the Guardian Fleet, a combined human Kalthari symbol that represented the new alliance. His crew moved with a precision and purpose that their old raiding days had never demanded. They had become something their ancestors would have been proud of. True warriors. Target acquired, reported Tern from her upgraded navigation station. The human technology integration had been seamless, giving them sensor capabilities that bordered on miraculous. The fortress is exactly where intelligence predicted. On the main screen, the Crimson Syndicate's stronghold appeared like a metallic cancer against the stars. The station was massive, bristling with weapons and surrounded by a defensive fleet that included ships from a dozen different criminal organizations. Admiral Harrison, Vex spoke into his communicator, the Bloodfang is ready for the final phase. Acknowledged, Captain Vex. Remember, we need to disable their command structure quickly or they'll scatter. Your boarding teams are our best chance of taking them intact. Understood. My warriors have been planning this for months, that was no exaggeration. The crew of the Bloodfang had spent their training period studying every aspect of the Crimson Syndicate's operations. They knew the layout of the fortress, the defensive patterns, the locations of key personnel. This wasn't the random violence of a raid. It was surgical precision warfare. Captain, Wraith approached, wearing combat armor that combined Kalthari design with human technology. The boarding teams are ready. We've never been better prepared for a hunt. Vex nodded. The transformation of his crew had been remarkable to witness. Freed from the need to prey on the weak, they had rediscovered what it meant to be warriors. Their training scores had impressed even hardened human special forces instructors. Sarah sends her regards, Admiral Harrison transmitted. She's monitoring the operation from Terra Prime. Apparently, she's quite proud of how her first diplomatic assignment turned out. Despite everything, Vex smiled. The human girl who had single-handedly brought down his ship was now working on her next assignment, converting a group of Xerian pirates to the Guardian cause. Early reports suggested she was having similar success. All units commence Operation Righteous Hunt, Admiral Harrison ordered. The space battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Human ships engaged the Syndicate's outer defenses with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Energy beams carved through armor plating while defensive. Systems that should have been impenetrable simply failed to function. But the real show began when the Bloodfang and her sister ships moved in for boarding operations. Kalthari assault pods launched from modified tubes, carrying warriors who had trained for exactly this moment. They struck the fortress with surgical precision, targeting specific weak points that human intelligence had identified. Boarding Team Alpha, you're through the outer hull, Vex reported as he led his personal squad through corridors that reeked of fear and desperation. No significant resistance, that was the first surprise. The Crimson Syndicate was supposed to have elite security forces, mercenaries who feared nothing. But when faced with Kalthari warriors backed by human technology and intelligence, they crumbled faster than anyone had expected. They've never faced real predators before, Wraith observed as they secured another corridor. Just like we used to be, all bluster when facing the weak, cowards when facing equal opponents. The comparison wasn't lost on Vex. 6 months ago, his crew might have behaved similarly if faced with overwhelmingly superior force, but their training had taught them something invaluable. How to fight worthy opponents instead of helpless victims. Team Beta has reached the command center, came a transmission from Zaxxon. Syndicate leadership is attempting to destroy evidence. Shall we stop them? Negative, Admiral Harrison interrupted. Human cyber teams are already copying their data systems remotely. Let them think they're succeeding while we gather intelligence. The level of coordination still amazed Vex. Human technology could accomplish things that seemed like magic, but they had learned to value Kalthari combat skills and tactical instincts. It was a true partnership, each species contributing their strength. Within 2 hours, the fortress was secured. The Crimson Syndicate's leadership was in custody, their assets frozen, their criminal empire dismantled. Decades of preparation and defensive planning had been useless against the combined might of human intelligence and Kalthari warriors. All teams, return to ships, Vex ordered. The hunt is complete. As his warriors filed back to their transport pods, Vex felt a satisfaction deeper than anything he had experienced during his raiding years. This victory meant something. It would make the galaxy safer for innocent species, would bring justice to victims who had suffered for years. Captain Vex? Admiral Harrison's voice filled the bridge as they returned to the Bloodfang. Outstanding work. Your crews performed flawlessly. Thank you, Admiral. It's gratifying to finally face prey worthy of our efforts. About that, Harrison said, and there was amusement in his voice. We've received requests for Kalthari Guardian teams from over 50 systems. Apparently, word has spread about your effectiveness against criminal organizations. 50 systems, A year ago, those same systems would have feared the Kalthari as potential raiders. Now they were requesting protection from them. The transformation was complete. There's something else, Admiral Harrison continued. The Kalthari Imperium has officially petitioned to join the Guardian Alliance. They want to convert their entire military to the new model. Vex felt a surge of pride. His people had seen what was possible when strength was used to protect rather than exploit. The old ways were dying, replaced by something better. And the other raider species? He asked, following your example. The Vorthans have already begun conversion programs. The Zerian pirates are negotiating terms. Even the hegemony warlords are making inquiries. The bridge erupted in cheers from his crew. They had become more than successful warriors. They had become catalysts for galactic change. Sir, Tern reported from her station. Incoming transmission from Terra Prime. It's marked as personal for Captain Vex. Put it through. Sarah Chen's face appeared on the main screen, but she looked different now. Older somehow, despite the short time that had passed. There was a confidence in her bearing that spoke of successful missions and growing experience. Hello, Captain, she said with that familiar smile. I wanted to congratulate you personally. The Crimson Syndicate operation exceeded all expectations. We had excellent teachers, Vex replied, and excellent prey to hunt. I'm glad you see it that way, because there's something else coming that you might find interesting. Have you ever heard of the Shadow Hegemony? Vex's blood chilled. Every warrior in the galaxy had heard whispers of the Shadow Hegemony, a mysterious organization that supposedly controlled entire sectors from behind the scenes. They were rumored to be the power behind dozens of criminal empires, the puppet masters who pulled strings across half the galaxy. Surely they're just legend, he said. 6 months ago, you would have said the same thing about human guardian fleets, Sarah replied with amusement. We've confirmed their existence and we're planning the largest joint operation in Guardian history. Interested in a real challenge? Vex looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These warriors had found their true calling, discovered what it meant to be predators worthy of the name. The excitement in their eyes was unmistakable. When do we begin? He asked. Planning starts next week. But Captain, there's something you should know. This operation will require the cooperation of every Guardian force in the galaxy. Humans, Kalthari, converted Vorthans, reformed Zerions, all working together. The galaxy's greatest predators united against its greatest threat. Vex mused. Our ancestors would write songs about such a hunt. I hope so, Sarah said. Because if we succeed, it will mark the beginning of a truly peaceful galaxy. One where strength protects the innocent instead of exploiting them. As the transmission ended, Vex reflected on how much had changed since that day when they had captured a seemingly helpless human girl. That girl had seen potential in them that they hadn't even recognized in themselves. She had offered them a chance to become something greater than raiders and slavers. They had seized that chance and transformed not just themselves, but their entire species. The Kalthari were no longer the galaxy's most feared predators. They had become its most trusted protectors. Set course for Terra Prime, Vex ordered. We have a new hunt to plan. As the Bloodfang jumped to hyperspace, accompanied by human escort vessels, Vex smiled. The galaxy's deadliest wolves had indeed cornered a kidnapped human girl. But in the end, it was the girl who had changed everything, including them.